Okay, so another one of the questions we get frequently is put a gear pump on and it lifts fine until I put weight in it, and then it either won't move at all or it just doesn't want to move. So how do I know if my pump is bad?
Your lift pump that raises your boom up and down.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty simple question, really. The gear pump supplies oil from the reservoir into the gear pump, which is then pushed to the hydraulic valve. The hydraulic valve has a relief valve cartridge in it that when there's no place for the oil to go, if there's too much load, if there's a crimped hose, whatever, it bypasses the valve and releases the oil out the outlet and back up to the tank. The valve spools push oil either to the front of a cylinder or the back of a cylinder to make it move forward, up or down, typically on a skid loader. When you can't lift something, either the pump has internal leakage, the relief valve is opening or leaking, or all that's working and the oil is just circulating through the cylinder and not going anywhere. So the quick easy test is when you raise your lift arms, do they stay up? Because if you raise them and you put your pedal in neutral and they drop, when the pedal goes in neutral, it disconnects all this other stuff, and we can be pretty sure there's a problem somewhere in the lift cylinder itself. When a pump is running at 1,000 RPMs, let's just say on this machine it's pumping 5 gallons a minute at 1,000 RPMs. If there's internal leakage, some of the oil that's getting pumped through here is leaking internally back to here. And the internal wear doesn't change, it's the same amount. So if it's leaking 3 gallons a minute at 1,000 RPMs, you only get 2 gallons a minute out here. When you rev it up to 2,000 RPMs, you now have 10 gallons of flow. You're still leaking 2, and all of a sudden it goes from 2-gallon output to 8-gallon output. So that's clue number one. If it barely works when your throttle is really slow and you rev it up and it seems to work fine, you got internal leakage somewhere. And it's either in the gear pump or in the relief valve cartridge. The relief valve cartridge could have dirt in it and be stuck open. The seals could be blown on it. Typically, if that's the problem, you take it out, you look at it. It's usually evident if you have any mechanical common sense. If this isn't the case, if it only lifts to a certain amount of weight and then it quits regardless of engine RPMs, then we suspect the relief valve setting. A lot of relief valves are adjustable, and the springs tend to settle over time. When a machine gets 10 or 15 years old, it's very common to find that it might have been set at 2,500 pounds and now it's opening at 1,500. Over 15 years, nobody noticed it happening. So you need a pressure gauge to check that. The easiest way to do that is plug a pressure gauge into your auxiliary port in the front end of the boom, engage your auxiliaries and rev up your engine, find out how much pressure you got. That is the pressure where your relief valve opens. What you don't ever want to do is just turn it in as a test, because if you turn it in as a test, now say you got leakage here, you got low pressure, you turn this in higher. Well, this wasn't the problem, it wasn't opening. So when it's turned in, it's still not opening, you still have leakage. Now you figured out, hey, my pump's bad, you put a new pump on it, the relief valve is cranked in to say 3,000 pounds, the pump's good for 28, boom, your pump blows up, and I get a call, hey, your new pump blew up, and then we talk about it then instead of now. So that's just a warning, it happens. If you crank in your relief valve for a test, please crank it back out. If you bought a machine at auction, somebody else might have cranked it in, crank it out, put the new pump on, put a gauge on it, and slowly crank it up while you're watching the gauge.